Ben, thanks for doing this interview. I just want to start out by asking you, how did you become an entrepreneur? What was the sort of the genesis of your entrepreneurial journey?
Quite upset with the status quo. Always looking to find more efficient ways to do things. Part of that I've heard described as laziness. I was always lazy, so I want to find a simpler way to do something to get it done faster, and then not have to work. But also the ability, I think it's an ability to look at things and believe that I'm capable of solving it better than the way it's been done.
Where'd that come from?
That's a very good question, because my parents aren't business people at all. They've been in education, and one of the things that I've been taught, or that I grew up with, is a belief that if you give it your best shot, you've got a good chance of succeeding. And so there's almost confidence, I think, that I was able to build in trying things, failing, picking myself up and moving on. And that actually leads to sort of failure not be looking at a stumbling block, but actually just an opportunity to learn and try something again.
So were you raised that way? I mean, because school doesn't cultivate that. Typically.
Yeah, so school doesn't. I think it is part of the way that I was raised, and education has played a big factor in that. But I also think I'm quite comfortable with risk of getting it wrong, risk of you having to start again, and I'm not sure whether that's taught or inherent. No one seems to have the answer for that one.
Yeah. So I mean, in the big 5 personality traits, openness is, there's a hereditary component to openness, like openness to novelty, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of like what people would equate with risk tolerance. But also what the literature supports is that entrepreneurs tend to be like more risk averse. The experienced entrepreneurs, they become more risk averse. They learn to test ideas before they just sort of leap out the window to do things. So, but I want to come back to something you said, Ben. Like, your entrepreneurial, the genesis of your entrepreneurial mindset is like a dissatisfaction with the status quo. That's interesting to me. Can you say more about that? Like, what do you mean specifically?
So I think if I look back at all of the various ventures I started, there were what some people would call gaps in the market, or there were areas where the perfect solve hadn't been found, and there was an opportunity to...
But so I want to stop you, because what I'm hearing you say without really saying it, and maybe I'm getting it wrong, so you can stop me, but you're not assuming the world is the way it is. I mean, how old are you at this time you're thinking this way?
Well, I've started business from about 15, 16, and a lot of them I wouldn't call businesses. They were more just ideas, gaps, opportunities that you could have done something differently. An example, a lot of records my parents or friends, family friends have, that weren't able to be played anymore because record players went out of fashion. You couldn't find any LPs, and so I would convert them onto CDs, and I made a business around it. It didn't last very long. But that's an opportunity where sometimes, if I take a step back, entrepreneurship, I think, is sometimes misunderstood. People think of entrepreneurs as the Silicon Valley guys who are raising a few million to build a business with massive investment and massive opportunity and then list it in 5 years. That's not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a guy at the street selling a wire toy. It's someone putting records onto CDs. It's someone who's able to find a business idea, an opportunity, and monetize it. And that's really, I think, given me a lot of perspective as to what you're trying to do. It doesn't need to be a massively important venture in the eyes of someone else. It needs to fulfill what you're going out to achieve, and that's typically, in my view, that's changing status quo, that's finding a gap in the market, filling it, and able to monetize it.
But what I'm trying to get to, Ben, is like, how at the age of 15 are you already thinking there's things missing in the world, and it's up to me to like find what those missing things are. Like, that's what's unusual in a 15-year-old kid, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I suppose.
Where did that come from?
I'll give three things I think that it comes from, and this is based on personal reflection. I've got no statistical evidence to give you. I think it's 3 things. The first is its inherent competitiveness. I'm incredibly competitive. I never ever want to be second at anything, and when I am, I have to talk to myself that it's okay. And so where things are happening, where there's solutions in the world that I think could be better, could be improved, I want to go and build it myself and show the world that I can do it sort of in a better way. That's the first one. Second is I was and I am still, I try to be quite well read. And certainly as a kid growing up, even if I didn't have the best education in the world, I would read a lot. Of supplemented with stories, narratives, people's biography. I mean, anything that I could read, I would try to read. And that resulted in good perspective, I think. But it also resulted in, and maybe there's a negative word for it, almost a confidence beyond what you would expect in a 15-year-old. Not because I believed the 15-year-old person was good, but because everyone I'd read had the wisdom and had the vision and been able to do things, and I thought I could draw on that. And as a result, actually, a very practical implication is at the age of, I think, 17, I had my first mentor, because I was like, wow, people really have a lot to share with me. So one of my strengths is a learner, and that drove me a lot, because then I could look at an entrepreneurial opportunity and not think I'm there to provide the best solve, but I'm there to learn. If I stuff it up, that's fine, because I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to be able to do something. So that was sort of the second thing. And then the third, and some people put this as point one, for me it wasn't, although I think over time maybe it does become more important, is there's a financial opportunity. I thought it was great that I could do something and I'd generate a bit of pocket money and I could have a little business card saying CEO for something. It wasn't really the driver of it, but certainly now that I do it sort of full time, that is much more of a reality. And you actually do it because you're able to generate an income and hopefully affect change, not just to my own lifestyle, but to those I can employ and the influence we can have.
Yeah. I mean, that's been a common theme throughout interviews, and I think a lot of people mistakenly think that entrepreneurs are solely driven by a desire to make money. And I think that's a big mistake. You just don't really understand the entrepreneur. The money's part of it, but it's not the sole driver. It's
not the driver, but I think what I've realized is that depending on how you portray your goal, it can be interpreted like that. So, and what I mean by that is, no entrepreneur will ever say, I don't want to be successful. But depending on the context in which they're interviewed, some people will interpret that as, oh, they just want to make money. And to them, success could be a whole range of things. Success isn't necessarily financial. It could be, but it's probably that and X, Y, Z. And success is very difficult to define because everyone has a different paradigm, but it's certainly only part of it.
So how you're translating LPs into CDs at the age of 15, right? You said that didn't last very long. Then what we'd keep me going on the evolution of your ideas. And
so yeah, did that for a period of time. Started out a student blog. It was called Varsity View. Sold that. That was really working on how to use technology to influence media. That was the advent of social media. Probably a couple of years into sort of Twitter and that being built out in university, and trying to become almost a thought leader in some sphere and see what that would entail. Built up a team who did that. It was all volunteer work. That we didn't make money off it. It was more just an opportunity to try it. Although I did manage to sell the business, and then did investment. Was part of a company called Oracle Investment Partners. We were a group of students who had all studied finance, and we made sort of investment decisions on Altec stocks, which is our sort of small caps investment portfolio in South Africa. And each of those were very strategically to learn something different. Again, I didn't really know if they were going to work or not work, but I wanted to continue to develop and continue to understand how to manage, how to invest, how to assess risk. And at each of those times, again, I had a mentor who was saying, look, try this, do that, which was great. Yeah, so that was sort of how I developed. Then I went off into investment banking. So as a non-startup as you can get, I really enjoyed it. I made the decision for a few reasons. Firstly, I really wanted to get a very fast learning curve. I wanted to earn some capital or generate capital so that I could possibly start something afterwards. I didn't have an idea that I was willing to work on full time, so it was opportunistic to go and actually work somewhere else. And I wanted to build a network of people who I thought I could not only learn from, but possibly have a relationship with sort of after my stint there. So those are all great reasons to do it. And while I was there, sort of started thinking again on what opportunities were in the market, what could I apply from banking into startup, into a tech company or into something that I'd like to work on. And the genesis of HouseME, which is what I'm working on now, was actually a banking concept of efficiency. So I come back to that right at the beginning, status quo, there's a gap in the market. Well, in housing, the problem I identified was pricing, poor pricing for rental. So HouseMe's genesis was simply an auction platform where tenants could bid on what they're willing to pay. It's developed tremendously since then, but that was the genesis of it. Again, just looking for that sort of opportunity and believing that I could fill the gap.
So is that a business that's going on now?
Yeah, so HouseMe is it's a residential rental technology platform. We disintermediate agencies. So we're able to do sort of what a managing agency would do at 10 or 15%, we do at 2.5%. And we use technology to do things like auction. We have the ability for people to rent without paying a deposit. We have risk mitigants. We have, I could go on, but basically we're there to replace the need for an agency and to take people who are currently doing it themselves and say, listen, we can give you tools that make it a lot more professional, a lot more risk averse, and we can assist with that.
How did you come up with that idea?
Efficiency of market. So again, it started out as an auction, and then realized quite soon as I started pitching this to people that was a problem. They didn't like the pricing that they had, but it wasn't actually the biggest problem. They were more concerned about things like scams. If they're a tenant, I'm worried that there's a landlord scamming me for my deposit, that he doesn't actually own the place and so I can't actually stay there, that he's racist or sexist and he's not going to let me go in. And if you're a landlord, you're saying, I'm worried the tenant's not going to pay, I'm worried there's damages afterwards, I'm worried that no one looks after the place, that the lease is not renewed. And so we realized that actually to build an offering, you have to be a lot more complete than just focus on pricing and efficiency. So around that, we've now built out HouseME into the platform it is.
Wow. So how old are you now?
28, 27, 28, yeah.
You know, I'm listening to your story, and I listened to the interview that, I've forgotten the guy's name, but one of the founders of Airbnb.
Mm.
And it sounds like your story in that, you know, when he was in high school, he was like doing pranks, but he was coming up with ideas. He wanted to do things that no one had ever done before. When he was in college, he invented a cushion you sit on when you get your artwork criticized. He was in like Rhode Island School of Art and Design or something.
Mm.
But you know, what I like in your story, Ben, is that, you know, I've interviewed 500 entrepreneurs, and there's two things I keep hearing. You got to be looking for problems to solve,
mm-hmm.
and you got to be trying things, right? And you got to be in the arena for it to happen. And it's rarely is it one big idea that comes along. It's
iterative. It's very iterative. And I think just to emphasize, I think that those are spot on. And if I was to summarize what I was saying, I'd agree that those are two good summary points. But I think that before that, you also have to have, and I think that the good word would be self-belief, the bad word would be arrogance. You have to believe that what you bring is good enough to change it. And that's actually, before you can look at opportunities and before you can look to solve them, you have to believe that you're good enough to do both of those two things.
Yeah.
And that's partly education, partly upbringing, partly characteristic. I'm not quite sure. But in all of the entrepreneurial stories that the guys who really made it, they faced incredible odds and said, whether the odds are 100 to 1 or 1 to 1, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's, when you talk about risk, that's the risk that entrepreneurs are very risk on. They believe in themselves because they believe that isn't a risk. And I think that's the best way of being described to me. Ben Horowitz has a book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, I'm sure you're aware of it, and he talks about that, that whether the odds are 1 in 10,000 or whether it's a sure thing, you still have to do it. It's just that an entrepreneur, and I can put myself in this category, believe that I can. Often I'm proven wrong, but we can believe we can.
Yeah. So there's a couple things I would like to say about that. George Bernard Shaw said, the reasonable man conforms himself to the world, and the unreasonable man expects the world to conform to him. And therefore all progress relies on the unreasonable man, right? So there is that. Like you have to have some sort of an unreasonable belief. But I think there's another element though that I wanted to dig into a little bit, and I think that the term I think you're talking about is self-efficacy. Your belief in your own ability to hit the target that you set out to hit is the technical term is self-efficacy.
I like that more than arrogance.
Right? But I've also heard it framed like this: like one of the characteristics you need to be successful is this balance between let's call it ambition and humility, right? There's a tension that exists between those two things that is interesting. But I've also seen that the entrepreneur story, like when you start out to like make records into CDs, like you're actually building your efficacy right? You don't realize it's happening to you, but these little successes like increase your efficacy, and you keep setting higher and higher goals for yourself, right? You don't come out of the gate thinking, I'm going to go out and start my own airline.
That's right.
Right? You start with a little thing, you realize you can impact the world, and you start doing that in a greater and greater way, which is not the experience most people have.
Yeah, I think it's well said. I think that the way that I've described it to people before is that I see the challenge just as hard as someone else does. I just believe that it's beneath me, that it's doable, it's absolutely accomplishable, that the challenge itself is not going to win, and actually can be quite exciting. In fact, it's a reason to get out of bed in the morning. Maybe beneath me is not the word, not that it wouldn't be a challenge, but more that it's within my abilities to accomplish. There's a fantastic phrase I remember in banking, and I talk about it a lot to my staff, which is, we have to, as entrepreneurs, particularly in startup, the question you have to ask yourself every day is, can we stay solvent for longer than the market stays irrational? That is the fundamental belief of an entrepreneur. And it comes from trading, comes from banking. Traders would say, look, I'm taking this position on a particular company, and I'm hedging on, or I'm putting on 100 million on this thing, because the company's going to fail. Am I right or wrong? Is the market going to see this quicker than when I lose the money on this position? And that's every opportunity you're going to take as an entrepreneur. Can your view of the market be right, and everyone else has to conform to it, as you point out?
Yep. So, what do you think that you are uniquely, like, what are you hardwired to do that makes it work for you? Like, what is your unique strength or ability that makes your thing work?
To be honest, I don't think I have anything that's unique, or that I'm particularly good at anything. I think I work hard. I'm not scared of work. I think maybe that's, in fact, if I can go back to what I was saying, maybe that's what I mean more about that challenge. Not that it's beneath me, but that whatever it would need, I can rise above it. That would have been a better way to say it. And so that work ethic, I think, is what I can bring in. And one of the things, in fact, that I found in my co-founder, and we both dedicate ourselves to that in the first year, was just two of us. We said, look, we might not be the smartest, most qualified, most experienced, most funded, better networked founders in the world, but we will work harder than everyone else. And so that sort of drive has been with us from the beginning. And I would argue that if I was to say there was one thing that was unique about me, I'm very willing for people to say I'm stupid, I'm arrogant, I'm all these terrible things, but they must never say I didn't work hard, because that's what I can contribute. So I think that would maybe be one thing. And then the second is, and this has been learned, very much learned, I don't want to do it for me. And it's been a lot easier, a lot better to want to uplift other people, whether it's staff members showing them how to do a particular job, or whether it's our clients helping them find properties that they otherwise wouldn't, whether it's landlords explaining to them why they shouldn't be racist, whatever the case is. That's been a much more motivating force than to do something for my success or for my financial well-being, or whatever the case is. And that shift, I think, although not unique, would certainly typify a number of entrepreneurs that I know who are very successful, who believe in something greater than just their job day to day. And so a combination of that is what keeps us going.
That's pretty profound what you just said, in my view. I mean, there's two things that anyone can do, because giving up happens in your brain. It's something like, not giving up is something anyone can do, right? But also that combined with the desire to be useful to others is not about Ben. I mean, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I know we don't have time, but I really appreciate you saying that. And I think that's a real nugget, a takeaway from this talk that people can hear and latch on to that, right? Just don't give up. And it's not about you. It's not about making yourself rich. It's about contributing in some way to the world in a meaningful way that lifts other people up.
Yeah, I think and they're linked, because if you do see the world like that, it's a lot easier not to give up, because you can always help someone, you can always serve in some way. And actually some of the most energizing times of the company has been when if XYZ doesn't happen, people are going to walk home without a salary this month, or our client's not going to get served, or whatever the case is, and suddenly there's no question in your mind, you will do it, you will accomplish it. The other thing is you really want to be able to sell your vision, to share your vision. So when we're building a team, we now have a team of about 28. 27, 28, critical to us being able to help everyone else perform well is to, yes, instill hard work into them. Hopefully we hire for that. But secondly, impress upon them the importance of what we're doing for the broader community, for that broader goal. And that's what I believe a vision should do. If your company's vision, if you as a personal entrepreneur, if your vision is compelling enough, not only do people gravitate to your company, but they're willing to work for you. And we, I'm a very young founder. I'm the first to say I don't know everything. I've got lots to learn, lots of mistakes to make. But people trust me, and this is what they tell me. They trust me because they know that I'm going to do the very best I can for the ultimate vision. And that's what they care about. They don't really care who's helping them, whether it's me or the next person. But that vision is then communicated. And as I say, that stems out of those two things, working hard and for something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Great.
Thank you, Ben.
Pleasure. Thanks for your time.